Today's hike is out to Sidney Peaks. This is Bryan Head behind me that I was up at close to a week ago now when I was up there, overlooking the town of Bryan Head, which is the highest elevation town in at least the lower 48. Not sure if that includes Alaska or not, but it sits at over 10,000 feet. This hike is just going out a couple miles to, I think there's 3 peaks next to each other that are called Sidney Peaks. Don't know if you actually can get out to them or if you just go next to them. But there's a whole trail system up here. So I'm planning on just wandering around up in the high places for a couple extra hours after I make it out there because I don't have anything else to do. Well, on the map, this hill is what is labeled Sidney Peaks. Not sure why peaks as in plural. We'll maybe find out when we get up there. The trail goes around to the pass to the right of it. Don't know if it's actually going to go up on top. I might just go investigate it myself if it doesn't. Well, the trail has started to descend a little bit, so I was thinking about climbing up this peak on the left and then turning around. But I looked over to the right, and it looks like there's some interesting rocks over there, so I think I'm going to continue down as far as those rock formations and then turn around. It'll descend a little bit, but not that much. Well, I was thinking about going to that rock formation first and climbing up this small mountain on the way back, but it looks like there's a ton of deadfall on that side of the mountain, so I'm going to go up on this side and hopefully won't have to deal with as many downed trees if I do that. Okay, the wind feels pretty nice after that climb. That one looks a little bit taller. I think I'm going to head to that one, then go down to the rocks, and then come back up, and I'll leave the trail at the gradual slope to go up to the top of that one. Although I kind of want to go up that one too to get a view over that direction. We'll see. I've got all day and this hike wasn't a very long one. Might just do all of them. Alright, had a nice break. time to continue on. I'm going to see if there's a way to get down just going along the ridge here. Might just have to cut back through all that deadfall in the woods though. Down below is the Yankee Meadows Reservoir, and just beyond it to the left in all the red rock is Noah's Ark, which I will be hiking tomorrow and seeing if I can figure out how to get up on top of it. The regular hike just goes to a viewpoint that looks up at it, but I'm going to try to get up on top of it. And then away out to the north over here, somewhere out in the haze back there, is Sandy Peak that I hiked a week ago. It's actually quite a bit further down than I had initially thought from where I was up top up there on that peak on the right. Now that I'm down here, I'm getting closer to those interesting looking rocks. Not entirely sure it will have been worth coming all the way down here for that though. Alright, now I got the long walk back. There were some interesting rocks, but can't really get out to them at all. Oh, made it out here. Walked over to the edge. Someone has a camp set up over there. Seems like a weird place to leave a camp set up and not be there. I don't know where you really go from there. But I am now heading back. Passing back by that peak I went up before, I'm going to continue along the trail up to the saddle and then go off to the right on that next peak over, which I think is the one labeled Sidney Peaks on the map. But I'm still not very clear on where exactly Sidney Peak is. I'll see if I can tell once I get up there. Well, I think this is about as high as the saddle gets with the trail, so this is where I'm going to leave and start heading up. Well, this was actually a bit of a climb getting up here. Not terrible, but it was kind of loose. And there was a bit of elevation gain. So my guess is these are all just called Sidney Peaks. I'm just going to call them North Sidney Peak, Middle Sidney Peak, South Sidney Peak, and East Sidney Peak. And I say these are just 4 different parts of Sidney Peaks. That's my guess. I'm not really sure though. Well, I made it up on top up there and met this guy riding away on the bike now who has said his name is Vertical George. And is this guy in his 70s, and I made the mistake of asking him if he knew what the deal with the Sidney Peaks was and why it was called that. And he said it was 4 different peaks up here, all different parts of Sidney Peak. This was Sidney Peak, Middle Sidney Peak, and then there was Sidney Peak North, was the more rugged one I had been up on. And then this little mound here is the one that's just called Sidney Peaks. This is Sidney Peak South on the left, I think. But he would not stop talking for it. It was about half an hour, telling me about all the different mountains he's climbed around here. He did give me some good tips on ones to check out, so that's nice. But it was about a half an hour I was stuck up there talking to him. He was very nice. But I'm on my way now. I am going to go check out this one on the left here. Sidney Peak South, I think that is. We hike over to this one. Involves some bushwhacking, some bones. Oh, there's a lot of bones. Something seems to have been eaten over here. Is it more than one thing? That's a very long spine. There's multiple sections and a jaw. Huh. This one does have a nice view out this way. Good. Does this have a summit register? This doesn't seem like the kind of mountain that would have a summit register. Guess we'll see what's in this thing. Noni Peak. Why is this Noni Peak? Was that one the Sidney Peak South? No, it can't be. I don't know. I don't know why this is called Noni Peak. Oh, look, it's Vertical George. How often does this get climbed? 9/125, 6/19/26. Has this been climbed 3 times? Okay. Don't know what the deal with this is. Don't know why it's called Noni Peak. This person apparently decided to name it after themselves. Mike Amerson, Noni was here. No idea. But this apparently does not get climbed very often. The register only goes back to last year, but there's only 3 names in it. There's Hancock Peak out over there, and I'm going to head back and camp down over that way. Before I head back to the car, I'm going to head out to that peak across the way, since that one is what is actually called Sidney Peak for some reason. Alright, here is what is actually labeled as Sidney Peak on the map. There's not really much to it. So there was Sidney Peak, Middle Sidney Peak, and then beyond it was North Sidney Peak, although there were 2 peaks beyond it. So I'm not really sure what was with that. And then South Sidney Peak, and this is Sidney Peak. So if those were 2 separate peaks past Middle Sidney Peak, that would be 5 Sidney Peaks. I don't know. The map does not label them properly. It just calls this spot Sidney Peaks. And Vertical George, who lives in Bryan Head and knows about the area, I thought he said there were 4 peaks. There was this one, Middle Sidney Peak, North Sidney Peak, and South Sidney Peak, which is a weird name because I'm pretty sure the spot I'm standing at is further south than South Sidney Peak. And I don't know why this one would be called Sidney Peak when it is by far the smallest one. And I don't even feel like it should count as a peak. No idea. Very fun hike though. I'm just about back to the trailhead up here. Looking down on Bryan Head again. This hike ended up being about 9 miles with 1,100 feet of elevation gain in 4 hours. And either included 4 or 5 peaks depending on how you count them, although they were very easy peaks. But other days, you hike 15 miles and 4,000 feet of gain to get 1. So I guess it evens out in the end.